Hello everyone, today I want to share with you some information that is not common for the English-speaking community. In fact, this is the first channel on the entire YouTube platform that comments on this.
This video explains a delicate topic. Please share your opinions kindly in the comments. If you think differently, feel free to express it. I will try to give the video an entertaining touch so that it is not boring, but I will try to be as neutral as possible. Thank you for understanding.
Today we focus on Hispanism, exploring its attempt to reshape history and counter indigenism. We will delve into how this movement directly influences some Hispanics' perspective on their own history and, significantly, how it can contribute to a resurgence of the country's national pride. It is worth noting that this ideology has different branches. Our attention today is focused on the most controversial variant, the one that specifically challenges the Protestant religion and nationality of Northern Europe and North America.
The liberators of America, the Spanish.
According to Hispanists, before the arrival of the Spaniards to America, especially in Mesoamerica, there were indigenous groups that governed their lands for many years. These groups had a magnificent culture that could be compared to the greatness of ancient Greece. Prominent example were the Olmecs who, even on philosophical level, stood out. The Olmec civilization had its own religion, similar to Christianity. However, with the arrival of the Nahuas, who were initially immigrants in the Toltec and Olmec metropolises, a primitive and uncivilized war was unleashed that radically changed the situation. Although they adapted the advances of local civilizations, they modified them to such an extent that the equivalent of Jesus Christ in their indigenous religion, Quetzalcoatl, was defeated, according to the Aztec version. This was experienced as an apocalypse in their daily lives. The fate of the original civilizations changed on April 21, 1519, when the third Spanish expedition to the mainland, led by Hernán Cortés, reached the coast of Xalchicaycan, today Veracruz. This event is notable since, according to the legend of Quetzalcoatl, that day was destined for his return, conveniently coinciding with the introduction of Catholicism in America. Compared to Protestants in general, Spanish Catholics were considered kind to the indigenous people. Hernán Cortés, often seen as responsible for the devastation in America, received support from the oppressed indigenous peoples themselves to defeat the Aztec. It is crucial to note that Cortés arrived with less than 700 men, 16 horses and mares. At the end of the campaign in June 1524, Cortés brought to New Spain, Mexico, 12 Franciscan missionaries selected the previous year by the General of the Order, Fray Francisco de los Angeles, and the Emperor. However, the specific order was not to impose itself, but to come and learn from the indigenous people. Many Franciscans dedicated themselves to learning Nahuatl exclusively because Cortés did not impose Spanish on them. They introduced innovations that today are considered advanced in the Anglo-Saxon world, according to Hispanists, such as the famous spindles and customs. It is essential to understand that many of these Franciscans were from Flanders, present-day Belgium, and only spoke French or Dutch. The most compelling evidence of Hispanism is that the Spanish Empire was practically the precursor of something similar to human rights before France. The various institutions that Spain established, such as the Casa de la Contratación de Indias, the General Archive of the Indies, the Casa de la Moneda, among others, paved the way for indigenous people to have rights and not be enslaved. Here, a crucial point of Hispanism is highlighted. It is defended by arguing that Bartolomé de las Casas, in charge of disseminating what was happening in America, invented data giving rise to the precursor of the Black Legend, something that the enemies of Spain took advantage of. Over time, African slavery came to Spain at the hands of the Portuguese, who were pioneers even before the English and French. Hispanists suggest that, although there was slavery in Spain, slaves here had better conditions. They argue that those who left slavery paid a price that they consider lower, and that in Spain there was no hatred towards the slave. What they mean by this? It is very simple. If you go to the United States or England in the past, slaves were considered both labor and despicable beings. Despite being expensive to maintain, they were mistreated. This did not happen in Spain. There were slaves here too, but they were seen as labor and human beings. They served their established term or paid their employer for their freedom, and were free to start a family, hold political office, among other things. A notable case was that of Juan Latino, also known as Juan de César, a Spanish Renaissance poet and humanist. He is considered the first black person to receive university education in Europe and to achieve a professorship. At the University of Granada, he held the chair of grammar and Latin language. His skill was so extraordinary that even Miguel de Cervantes, the writer of Don Quixote, praised him. To give an idea, today, if you visit the Dominican Republic and then go to Haiti, you will find completely different populations. Haiti is a country of descendants of slaves, with little miscegenation, while the Dominican Republic is a country full of cultural mixtures and miscegenation, with a diverse population that includes mestizos, mulattoes, Creoles, and indigenous people.
The fall of non-white people against France?
On October 3, 1700, a Sikh King Charles I signs the will that puts an end to the Habsburg dynasty in Spain, passing the crown to the future Philip V of Bourbon. The conflict that culminates with the change of dynasty is the War of the Spanish Succession. After the death of Charles I in 1700, the last monarch of the Austrian dynasty, his grandson, Philip of Anjou, inherited the throne, marking the beginning of the Bourbon reforms. The Bourbon reforms began in the 18th century in the Viceroyalty of New Spain and the Viceroyalty of Peru, introduced administrative changes in the Hispanic Empire. This project of political and economic reorganization sought to improve the governance and administration of the vast domains of the empire, without a total transformation of the existing order. The actors of Bourbon reformism sought to revitalize the state apparatus through a centralized bureaucracy from Madrid, restoring the prestige and influence of the monarchy. The aim was to establish greater political, commercial, and administrative control within the empire. Two stages are recognized. An initial one with moderate changes during the reigns of Felipe V and Ferdinand V, and another, more intense and ambitious one under the reign of Carlos I. The impetus for reforms arose in 1763, after the disastrous results of the 7 Years' War. The capture of Manila and Havana by the English and the Peace of Paris in 1763 highlighted the strategic importance of the American colonies, especially in the Caribbean. This boosted the monarchy's awareness of the need for reforms to stabilize and strengthen its rule in the Indies. The reforms aimed to improve economic, administrative, educational, judicial, and military structures to increase the power of the monarchy. However, these initiatives had variations in different places in the Hispanic Empire due to the various societies with unique characteristics and dynamic. The economic measures focused on increasing taxes, controlling customs rates, applying protectionism in manufacturing, stimulating agriculture and mining, and freeing productive activities from obstacles. This meant a growth in colonial trade, with Cadiz being a prominent Andalusian city in this trade. These reforms were not well received by the Criollos, descendants of Spaniards, or mestizos with peninsular families.
Playing with my toys that Dad gave me.
Simon Bolivar, recognized as the liberator of America, was a Venezuelan military man and politician who dedicated 2 decades to fighting against the Spanish crown with the aim of achieving the independence of Bolivia, Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, and Venezuela. Accompanied by colleagues such as Jose Francisco de San Martin Matoras and Bernardo O'Higgins. Among other libertadores, Bolivar and his companions were studious Creoles who had completed their studies in Europe and were attracted to Freemasonry. This connection with Freemasonry fueled an unparalleled ambition. According to Hispanists, it is stated that Charles Darwin had an encounter with indigenous people who expressed that they lived better with Spain and that latent discrimination was beginning to emerge in Chile. It is important to highlight that this perspective comes from Hispanicists. Hispanists argue that, despite being a territory abandoned by Spain, Costa Rica, for example, has managed to prosper considerably thanks to its historical blessings compared to its Central American neighbors. Ironically, these experts affirm that some countries that were richer during the viceregal era Mexico, Colombia, etc., mainly due to their resources, ended up impoverished due to the corruption of the liberating leaders.
The Black Legend, Leyenda Negra in Spanish, as we know it today.
With the Spanish Empire already 68 meters underground and the Catholic religion in crisis due to the Protestant reforms of the past and the strong impact of the main powers being non-Catholic, with the United States being majority Protestant and the USA being atheist, the former paradises on Earth, the Spanish territories were in a time full of dictators, assassinations, guerrilla wars, communist movements, and other problems of the 20th century. Furthermore, Italy was also going through a complicated period, not to mention the conflicts of Yugoslav Catholics with other religions. In this complex scenario, the British specifically, after 2 world wars and losing absolutely everything, came up with an ingenious marketing strategy. They asked themselves, are we losing everything our ancestors once fought for? Their solution: blame everything on Spain, diverting attention from the fact that, along with the French, other North Europeans and the Portuguese, they played a significant role in the destruction of an entire continent. In short, Hispanists argue that the British, by pointing out the Spanish Empire as the culprit, attempted to hide their collective responsibility for various global problems.
Post-Protestant brainwashing.
In countries like Mexico, they teach in schools that were a product of colonization, which were the best that existed, the Aztecs. However, those white Catholics came and took away their future. After that, everything was a disaster, aspiring to be like the United States, Protestant. But oh surprise, they will never be blue-eyed males with 3 cars. Descendants of wealthy British families, Latinos are the product of those disgusting Spaniards. We are left longing for first world cities and social development.
According to Hispanists, we should stop thinking that we are a product of Spain coming and taking everything from us. Rather, we should be proud of being the result of people with values. Instead of killing as other Europeans did, they preferred to form families, teach customs, combine traditions, learn from new cultures and build schools, universities and parks. They must strive to fight against the current, as did the Spaniards who refused to sell their dignity by killing to obtain wealth. Despite the social and economic difficulties that some face, they must make an effort to go out and proudly demonstrate that they are Hispanic. In the previous speech, when he refers to the distorted version that indigenous Mexicans have, he mentions Latinos instead of Hispanics. This is crucial information for Hispanists. For them, a Latino can be a Haitian, a Brazilian, or even a French-speaking Canadian, but they will never say, I am Latino. Therefore, for Hispanicism, it is essential to stop using the word Latino, also because, according to Hispanicists, a Mexican, a Costa Rican, and an Argentine are completely different. The only thing that unites them is that they speak Spanish. That's the key. Spain united us with a language, and there lies the problem of, for example, Bolivia and indigenism. If you separate yourself from Spanish, your culture is divided, and the unity of a country like Mexico is not possible without Spanish. After all this information, what do you think about whether the Spanish Empire was advanced for its time? Was it really that extraordinary? In the Spanish-speaking community, Hispanism is something relatively new, but thanks to dissemination, what it establishes is what there are many people who agree and others who don't. I assume that those who will see this video, since it is in English, will not be Hispanic. What do you think? Do you agree with Hispanicism? Were Northern Europeans the bad guys in history? Is there a neutral point? Let me know in the comments. We say goodbye. Bye-bye.